Hey YouTubers, and welcome back to Tony the Technician channel. And today we're going to be going into changing the rotor and hub assembly on a two-wheel drive 2006 Ford F150 SXT. So like I said, two-wheel drive. So the front end rotors are a rotor hub assembly all in one with sealed bearings already installed. And then there's going to be a spindle nut that you cannot reuse. You can, the wheel comes off, then you're reliable. So just keep that in mind. It does state do not reuse right on it. It is a nylon locking nut, 36 millimeter, and red Loctite. You can purchase them from Napa for $20, and it's got the red Loctite, everything already. The rotors are going to be around $116, so keep that in mind. So we're going to do both sides. I'll show one side in the video. I'm not doing brakes. This vehicle recently had brakes done, and the rotors were not swapped with it, and it caused a lot of vibration. So I measured the rotors. They're out of round, warped, and there's rust channels on it, which cause the new brake pads to ride in those rust channels and cause vibration. Today we're looking at a Ford F-150 with an issue of vibration when braking. And yes, a lot of you might think that right away it's an out of round rotor, warped rotor, and that is very, very possible. But there's also another issue that you might find, and this vehicle recently had new brake pads put on. Well, when you put new brake pads on an old rotor, if the rotor is not clean or free of rust, then the new brake pad may ride in these rust channels here and here, like this is. So yes, I measured the rotor and it is out of round. I just took a digital mic and measured it. It is a little out of round, so we're going to be replacing the rotors. But yes, another cause of this issue is the brake pad riding in those rust channels, and you could simply remove the rotor and grind down the rust off of the rotor, and most likely it'll solve your issue. But as you can see here, we've also had a lot of heat transfer as well as grooves cut into these rotors. I'm not sure if that's from the new pads or the old, most likely the old pads. But what's happening is the new brake pads are not riding correctly on these rotors. So you can either have these turned down, but nowadays it's just as cheap or almost as cheap to just go ahead and replace the rotor. So here it is, and the first thing you want to do is break loose your lug nuts, then get your vehicle jacked up and on jack stands. It is being supported not only by my jack, but two jack stands as well. So just as a precaution, as well as wheel chocks on all wheels because I am on a slight incline. After you've broken loose the lug nuts, and remove your wheel. You can either use a 13/16 or a 21 millimeter. Once you remove the wheel, you want to go ahead and remove the cotter pin. Cotter pin's out, castle nut cover. Here is your spindle nut. It is a nylon locking 36 millimeter nut, which cannot be reused. A lot of people do, but it says not to. For one, that comes off, you may have really big issues. So this gets torqued to 295 foot-pounds, so that's a lot of stretch that's being put on this. So I highly suggest just replacing it. I picked them up at Napa for $19 a piece. AutoZone I think had them for $30 a piece, so Napa was the way I went. If you're replacing the brakes, you can remove the caliper assembly by 2 bolts on the back side. This center section can come off, you can pry it off, and then get to your brake pads. These are new brake pads that were installed on bad rotors. So I will be just removing the caliper mounting bracket. The whole assembly will come off. I'm going to take my 18 millimeter and break loose these fasteners on the back. There's going to be one right here and one at the bottom. And when you reinstall these get torqued to 148 foot-pounds. And then be careful because now this is all floating. You may need a pry bar in order to remove it. easily pry up right here. Same thing at the bottom. Go ahead, hang it up, whether you use a hook, a hanger, a string, whatever. Just get it up out of the way and make sure it's not hanging from the brake line. After that, you're going to want to break loose this 36 millimeter. Now, we'll see if this one's tight or not. On the other side that I just did, the nut was not torqued whatsoever. I hardly had to put any pressure to remove it at all. So let's see. Like I stated, at 36 millimeter. Nothing. This is 295 foot-pounds. I should not be able to do it this easily. Now we have this off. Literally states do not use. Not sure if you can read that or not. Trash. Rotor simply comes off. It's got the bearing already in the new one, just like this, and it is a sealed bearing. So I'm just going to go ahead and use a wire brush and some brake clean to clean up this area. So this surface is all cleaned up. You want to make sure that there's no big chunks or anything on here that will ruin your new bearing. So let's get this out of the way. Take a look at the new one. Just go ahead, spray it down with brake cleaner, parts cleaner, or soap and water. Because any rotors are shipped and stored with an oil on them to prevent them from rusting on the shelves. So you always want to make sure to clean this off so this oil does not absorb into your brake pads. Once you've cleaned it off and everything's good, just go ahead and slide it on. Slides on nice and easily. So now we can go ahead and reinstall your new $20 spindle nut. Here it is. It's a nylon locking with pre-installed red Loctite. Once again, it says do not reuse, 295 foot-pounds. So I'm just going to quickly run this down on here, and then we're going to reinstall the caliper and come back and torque this to 295 foot-pounds. There it is. Stop moving. So now we're just going to go ahead and reinstall the caliper and mounting bracket. One thing you may need to do is either use a caliper compressor or a piston compressor like this, or a C-clamp if you don't have this, or something similar. In this case, the brake pads are new, the rotor is new, so they're not going to match up. I can't slide it over, but this won't go thin enough in order to get in there and spread them. So I'm going to have to do it with the C-clamp, unfortunately. And once you've done that, make sure the brake lines aren't twisted or anything like that, and go ahead and reinstall. With these, you can put a couple of dots of blue Loctite. Simply take my 18 millimeter, snug these up, come back at 148 foot-pounds and tighten these or torque them to spec. After those two 18 millimeter bolts are torqued to spec, 148 foot-pounds, the caliper is all reassembled. You want to make sure all your brake line is reconnected the way it should be. So now we can go ahead and tighten this to 295 foot-pounds. So now we have that torqued to 295 foot-pounds. Now it's as simple as reinstalling your tire and torquing your lug nuts to 150 foot-pounds. Also, do not forget your castle nut and cotter pin. It is best to replace this, so if you can, pick it up while you're picking up everything else. This job roughly costs around $350, roughly $120 for each rotor and hub assembly, and $20 for this. So It's already a $350 job. If you take it to a mechanic and get that labor charge, yeah, it's going to be a spendy one. So that's also including brake pads, rotors, hub assembly, nut, and hardware. So keep that in mind, and if you guys can do this yourself, I really hope this helped. If it did, please make sure to hit that thumbs up, leave a comment down in the comment section if I forgot anything, or if you have any questions, and as always, subscribe if you're not a subscriber. See you guys next time.